Hey everyone, Brian here. Today we're going to be looking at how to disassemble a Rochester 2-jet carb. This should apply to the 2G, 2GC, and the 2GV. Here I got a 2GV. The 2GVs have what's often referred to as a divorced choke, in that it is mounted to the intake manifold, and then the choke rod actually comes up and clips on there. The 2G, I believe, is a manual choke, and the 2GC, I believe, is a heated choke. So really the only difference here is that if you have a 2G or a 2GC, you might have to disassemble the choke over here, but pretty sure it's just a few screws, so it shouldn't be a big deal. So this is, as I said, a 2GV from a 70 Chevy. And if you look on the side of the float bowl here, we can see it's got the casting numbers. I was able to use that top number to verify that the rebuild kit I was interested in was actually appropriate for this carburetor. I believe some of the ones in the 60s had a tag somewhere on the top that they often get lost. But if you have no number on it to identify it from, your best bet may be to take the carburetor apart first, check out the gaskets, all the parts and whatnot, and then kind of cross-reference those with some kits that you might be interested in, with looking at pictures of them and making sure they have all the necessary parts and whatnot. But anyway, I got all the linkages pretty much taken off here. Anything that's gonna get in the way. We'll pull this vacuum hose back here. I'm using my phone, so please excuse any shakiness or anything. I'll try to get everything as clear as I can. The benefit with the phone is it works really well getting up close to show any detailed shots. So, okay, as I said, got most of the linkages disconnected here. But most of them are just, you just slide them right out. Some of them have a little tab on them that you have to line up appropriately with the hole, and then you twist it out. Here's an example of that. So if you're having trouble getting any of them out, take a look at where the slot is, line the groove up with it, and just pop them right out. So we'll start up here at the top with the air horn. You got to remove these screws here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7, 8. For the sake of time, these are already loosened. I've actually already been in this carburetor. The gasket's pretty much just disintegrated when I separated it. But a good habit, especially when taking apart carburetors, is set these screws aside with one another. That way each time you take one out and you put it down, you'll know if it's longer or shorter than the others, if they're all the same size, and then you can write it down, make a mental note, document it, whatever you're going to do. So come up here and get this one out. As you can see, so far they're all the same size. And this is why it's a good idea to do this, because this screw here, if we look, is longer than the rest. So then you'd make a note that this screw here, this hole here, is where the long screw goes. It's also somewhat common sense. If you look, the rest of these are mounted down at this level, whereas this one is up about 1/2 inch, and that screw is actually about 1/2 inch longer. So, okay, let's get this one out. For the skinny fingers, I would stand no chance here. Figured having these loose would help save some time and less fumbling around with the screwdriver while I'm trying to hold the camera. Although this one seems to be a bit tight. Carburetor's probably shifting on me, that's why. the last screw. Set them down. As we can see, they're all the same size except that one long one. So I know that already. I'm gonna go ahead and put these in the bin. I have 3 bins here, one for each tier of the carburetor, if you'd like to say it that way. So everything from the top here is gonna go in this blue one. So with all the screws out, we can go ahead and lift gently. Go ahead and flip this around. Okay, so what we have here, have our float. Here's our accelerator pump. The needle and seat are underneath the float here. If we look over here, our return spring in here, power valve right there. 2 jets are right above my finger. The Venturi cluster here. Well, we're gonna go ahead and move this forward. Or put it over here out of the way, actually. We're gonna work on this one for right now. Okay, so to get the float out here, it's just this pin. Push the pin this way. Pull it out. Let's actually put this over here. We can go ahead and lift this float up and out. This is a nitrofill float, it looks like. One of the plastic ones. Supposedly, over time, they start to absorb fuel, so I'm going to be replacing that with a brass float. Here you have this little cage that the float sat in. Just gonna lift up here, take that out. Remembering how that went in, hole at the top right. Go ahead, set that aside. Now, there should be a retaining clip, I believe, holding this needle in, but there isn't, so we'll just pull the needle out. That rebuild kit should come with everything that I need. Here we have the seat. We're going to use a flathead to get that out. You can see the slot there. Okay, this has a gasket on the bottom, which is probably still sitting in the hole. There's the seat. If we look, there's the gasket. I put the seat over there. I believe this is magnetic, and might be able to. Yep, there we go. Otherwise, we'd have just turned it upside down to get it out. I guess it's more of a washer than a gasket, if anything. But we'll keep that with the seat here. Okay. Doesn't appear that there is a screen in there. I'm sure somebody else has been in here. It's probably long gone at this point. This here is your power piston. What this does is when you are at idle, remember this is upside down right now, but when you're at idle, this stays up, and then when you press on the gas, it comes down, and it pushes on your accelerator pump here on that little pin. Accelerator pump. Power valve, sorry. Power valve, not accelerator pump. Okay, a lot of times these are pretty much stuck in there because of how long they've been in there, and you can see this isn't really the most consistent movement here. It's a little rough, but I'm fortunate enough that this really isn't stuck, so it comes right out. However, if you have some trouble, keep pushing down on it, kind of flick it down, try and rock it back and forth a little, and then eventually this should come free on the bottom. It took me a little bit to get it there, but it wasn't too big of a problem. be careful with those. Don't pry on them, don't hit them with anything, don't force them forward and backwards, because they can break, and that's definitely the last thing you want to do. Alright, so from there, got the float, needle and seat, power piston removed. We can come over here to the accelerator pump. Another thing I noticed, I believe there should be a little clip, one of those little C-clips on the end of this to hold it in, which there is not. So, I took note of that. Take a look when you take yours apart. Pretty sure I can just pull this a certain way and I might be able to get that out. Seeing as it's not even in there appropriately. Again, sorry, I'm using one hand here. Alright, we'll get that out in a second. If you look at the back here, this is the whole accelerator pump linkage. Everything over here, as you can see. And if we look on the back of this flange here that the accelerator pump sits in, there's a little flathead screw. Gonna go ahead and loosen that, which I already pre-loosened as well. Just back that off a little, take some of the tension off. What that does is it holds the flange here along that rod for the accelerator pump linkage. So with that screw loosened, we can go ahead and pull this whole rod out. Set that aside. And now we can lift this whole thing out. We can go ahead and take our accelerator pump off. One thing I would like to note is this was positioned in here like so. So on the right side of it, there's a little D window that you can see on the right. Right here. And if we look at the rod that's attached to the linkage, you can see on the end of it, it is also in a D shape. So when you go to assemble this back together and you insert the rod in and you have the flange in here, you need to make sure that it's not like that, that the D window is on the right side and you have them aligned properly. That way, when you put them through, put this down for a second. Sorry, I hope you guys aren't getting dizzy. Okay, just had to get it situated properly. That way when you put it through, the little D portion on the rod will sit appropriately in the little D window on the flange. That way the whole thing rotates as one assembly. Otherwise, the whole thing's going to be spinning independently of the accelerator pump linkage. So we'll go ahead and put that in there as well with the flange. Now we can take a look at the accelerator pump. This accelerator pump you are able to take apart. I have seen some that you cannot actually separate the accelerator pump from the its little assembly here. And if you look on the top, it's got a retaining clip and a spring with the rubber cup here on the end that I'm spinning. And what you have to do is you have to push this whole assembly down. It's probably going to be a nightmare for me to do this with one hand. But you're going to have to push this whole thing down and clear that lip. See that lip right there? That's what it sits against. That's what the retaining clip sits against. So you can kind of see how it's almost coming off now. You're going to have to push down past that and slide the retaining clip outwards while the shaft goes out of the opening in that groove. So I'll try it with one hand here, but I don't think it's going to go very well. Might be better if I just take it apart and show you guys. I might be able to get it like this actually. There you go. So what I did is push down, holding the shaft up here, pulling it along the groove. And I'm going to try and get underneath that retaining clip with my fingernail and kind of separate it from the spring. Once our retaining clip pops out, this whole thing will come apart. Kind of a pain, especially when I'm trying to do it far away from myself. But once you get this apart, your rebuild kit should come with a new accelerator pump. And you can go ahead and get everything assembled appropriately. Okay, I got it. Alright, so with the retaining clip out, go ahead and pull the spring. A little stuck there. Pull the spring off. And you're left with the accelerator pump here. And now this is the lip I was talking about. Right here. And that lip is there to keep that retaining clip from going up too high. That's its stop. And the little groove in the middle, the thin part, is where you need to be able to overcome the spring. Let's get this back on. To be able to overcome the spring to get the retaining clip to come down into that thin groove, and then you could slide it out. Okay? The cup on the end there, just going to leave it on. Hopefully the rebuild kit comes with a new cup, so we'll not have to touch that anymore. The spring, I'm pretty sure you'll be reusing, as well as the clip. So we'll go ahead and put the clip back. Okay. So back here, I think we can move on to the other part of the carburetor at this point. Push that forward. We can remove the return spring here. Get some pliers. Okay. Now that we're on the middle tier of the carburetor, putting it in that middle bin. So down here we got the power valve. I believe there's a special tool to remove this power valve, but you can do it with a flathead. The challenge here is really that because the pin's in the center, you can't get a flathead straight across. You're kind of just going to have to ride on one of the sides, basically. Once you got one thin enough, that can kind of bypass that spring, the pin rather. But this little flathead's just fine. Just keeping it on the side. Okay. And here's the power valve. See the pin there that the power piston pushes down on. Go ahead and put that over there. Now we can take our jets out. One. And there's two. Okay. The jets should have a number on the face of them. These are kind of in rough shape at the moment, but for a 2G they should be the same size. From there, zoom out. We can move on to, oh, sorry, forgot about that. Got your little washer here. This is for the power valve. Just forget because it falls off. So, put this on the back onto the power valve just so we know. That has a gasket that goes with it. Gasket, washer, whatever it is. And then we can move up to the Venturi cluster here. Okay, so again, using the practice of putting these screws down one at a time. Okay, we got one. There's one screw. video is probably going to be kind of long since I'm working with one hand, but hopefully the clear picture will be worth it. Alright, there's 2 screws. You can see those 2 are the same size. I'm going to pull out this center one here. I already know what we're in for here, but okay, now if we look, I put this one here. You can see they're all different size. Well, this center one is a different size. The outer 2 are the same, and the center one is smaller. Not only that, but the outer 2 have a lock washer on them, and the center one has a gasket on it. More of a fiber washer. Okay, so that's something you're going to want to remember when you reassemble, as well as putting a new one on when you get your rebuild kit. Alright, so from there, go ahead and grab our Venturi cluster. If yours is stuck, just kind of get a flathead in under here and work it out a little. Just go ahead and lift this up. Okay. Nothing looks cracked. Oh, there's the gasket there. Get this gasket off. Actually seems to still be in one piece. Alright, so with this gasket we know what replacement we need. We put it back together, so we'll leave that there. This we can set out of the way. Come back over here. We have our well tubes here that we're going to pull out. We get the thicker flathead. Right here, there's one. Okay. Set that there. Before I take this out, you might notice that there is a flat side on it right there. You're going to want to pay attention to where that flat side is when you reassemble, because lining it up appropriately with the holes that are actually coming out of the tube on the Venturi will probably be in your best interest. Okay, so with those out, we got the main discharge hole right here. That's got the T in it. And there's a spring underneath the T, and underneath the spring is a check ball. So we're going to get some needle nose pliers here. Coming towards the T. If we can get it from a better angle. Better angle, I said, not worse. Okay. Alright, so we're going to grab the T. Try and hold on to the carburetor with my other hand here. And pull up and out. There's the T. Okay, your rebuild kit should come with a new one of those too. With the T out of the way, you can see the slot that it sits in. Focus. There you go. Probably help to get the spring out of the way. Okay, so we'll grab the spring, set that aside. There you go, there's a clear shot of the grooves that the T sits in. And at the bottom of that is a check ball. I don't know if this is small enough. Trying to use a magnetic power here. There we go. So there's the check ball. Take this check ball and set that aside. One thing I forgot to mention, now that we're looking at the check ball, on the 2GV, I've done two of them, so I'm not going to say that every 2GV only has one check ball, but from what I've seen so far, they only have one. But the 2Gs, 2GCs might just vary by 2 jets altogether. They will all have that one check ball that I just removed, and also there may be a check ball in the bottom of this well. If we look here at mine, there's really no spot for a check ball. That little hole there, I definitely do not think a check ball is going to fit in that. The ones that do have a check ball will generally have a little hole here, which is the intake for the fuel in the float bowl, and it will pull the fuel in, and it will have an outtake, I guess you can say. I don't want to say exhaust. It'll have an intake for the fluid and an outtake for the fluid as well, which will lead it over to the main discharge or wherever it's going to go. Whereas these that don't have the check ball, I believe it kind of just flows over through this little groove. If you had the check ball, for the fuel to get in, it would be an aluminum check ball, so it's light. It would flow above, it would float when the gas was going to pass through, and when you're not on the gas, it would seal. So if you fill some carburetor cleaner or anything in here and it stays, most likely you don't need a check ball. But if you try to spray some in there and you see it just starts pouring out of a hole over here, then most likely you do have the 2-hole intake outtake kind of setup, which requires a check ball in there. That wasn't too confusing, but all right. So with all of that taken apart, we got the check ball out, we got the Venturi cluster out. We can go ahead and flip this over. Look at that, nice and clean. We're gonna go ahead and separate the throttle body from the center part of the carburetor there. And for that, we're gonna need Phillips. 1, 2, 3. We'll go here. You might notice that the idle screw is still on here and stuff like that. Like, not everything is off, but I'll probably take off all the little odds and ends when I go to clean it. Okay, the levers are all loose. Should be able to lift this up now. One of them might still be holding. It's this back one here. Yep. Get that out. Lift the others off. And for these 3 screws, these 3 Phillips head screws, they each have a lock washer on them, and they are each the same size. Okay. Lock washer. So those are on the bottom. Put that in its own little spot over there. Okay, so this is the throttle body that we just removed. There will also be a gasket here. That also is ripped to shreds when I separated everything. And we're pretty much left with the idle mixture screws down here. So we're just going to go ahead and back those out. Should have done it while it was together. This would be flopping all over the place. Okay. Take a look at it. That looks pretty good. I don't see any ridges towards the end, or it's not flat, it's not smushed, no gouges. So go ahead and set that over. I already know that these 2 are the same size. When you take them both out, you're going to want to compare them, make sure they're the same. Well, that came out a little bit easier than the other one. Okay, same with this one. This one looks good, so go ahead and set that aside as well. Oh, here's part of the gasket actually. I'll take that and guess what's left of it for reference. Okay, and that should about cover the disassembly. Like I said, the idle speed screw and stuff is still on there, but it's just a couple screws. Pop those out. Next, I'm going to go ahead and clean this up. Wait for my rebuild kit to get here, and start putting it back together. And before I end the video, I'll just take another quick look, make sure I didn't miss anything. Yeah, and everything looks good. Looks like everything's out. Alright, well, although it was a lengthy video, hopefully it was detailed enough to help anybody that's never done this before. It's really not that bad. Especially with these, there really aren't that many, not that many little pieces with it. I mean, you got the T, the check ball, maybe a couple other odds and ends. Everything else is pretty sizable. Usually when I do this, just a quick tip, I usually work in one of these little pans that I find at the dollar store. That way when I separate pieces of the carburetor, if anything falls out, it doesn't go rolling off the thing and fall under, and then you never find it again. Because some of these things won't be in the rebuild kit. I'm going to say that most things are, but like a couple of springs, for example, may not be in the rebuild kit. So just want to hold on to everything, note where everything came from, so you have no surprises, things just falling out, and God only knows where it came from. But alright, that should cover it. Anything like the sizes for the screws, if you notice one that's longer, jot it down, keep a notepad with you. Take a bunch of pictures every step of the way. It's better to have more pictures than none to refer to. And especially notes to follow. You can write down each little piece that you take off at a time. That way you know the reassemble procedure is pretty much just the reverse. So hopefully that helped, guys. Hopefully I didn't babble too much. Thanks for watching.